Everyone to our first quarter 2023 Governor's Workforce Council meeting. I'm Mark Argosh, Chair of the Council. I'd like to welcome our council members as well as our many community, government, and business partners for today's meeting. Today, we're going to make a couple of minor kind of procedural improvements. We're going to spend the first 5 or 10 minutes doing our normal housekeeping business, and then start the regular part of the meeting at about 2:40. So while everyone is welcome to stay on, if you're not a member of the Governor's Workforce Council and want to get back about 10 minutes to your day, please feel free to drop off and come back at 2:40. Now I'd like to turn to our housekeeping business. I have a couple of updates regarding membership of the council. The Office of the Governor's boards and commissions are currently reviewing our updated bylaws that apply to the membership of the GWC. And they're going to be issuing new letters to all members who are governor's appointments, which is most people here, with an effective date and termination date. And please keep in mind that reappointments are acceptable, and we'll be discussing that with each of you prior to your assigned termination date. If you're serving on the council by virtue of your position, like, for example, being a state government official, then you will not receive a letter because your position is automatic. Second, there are a few members whose approvals are in process right now by the governor's team, so I won't specifically be calling on you to vote today on the minutes. Sean Coyne from Electric Boat, Marty Guay from Stanley Black & Decker, Jeff Walker from Infosys, Wes Alexander from Travelers. We're also in the process of filling a few open slots, one replacing Senator Haskell, one is a CBO slot, and one is a community member slot, and we're going to be doing those fairly quickly. So now what I'd like to do is I'd like to proceed to a vote to approve the minutes of the December 8th, 2022 GWC meeting. We need a motion from a council member to approve the minutes. Please state your name and state if you're a designee for the council member. Can we get a motion to approve the
I would
minutes?
make that motion. It's John Murphy.
Thank you, John.
Tiana Ocasio seconds.
Thank you very much. Any discussion? Now I'll do a roll call. I'll call on each council member to vote yes or no or abstain on approving the minutes. Alexandra Dahm or Paul Robertson from DECD. Commissioner Amy Porter from ADS.
Yes.
Andrew Bond or Sean Coyne from Electric Boat.
Yes.
Andrew Medici from Medtronic. Brian Doubles or George Anderson from Synchrony.
Yes.
Commissioner Russell Tucker or Keith Norton from the State Department of Education. Christy Pentima or Mark Soicher from CBIA.
Yes.
Chris O'Connor or Kyle Ballou from Yale New Haven Hospital. Cindy Bigelow from Bigelow Tea.
Yes.
Commissioner Bartolomeo from Department of Labor or Mark Pizzello.
Yes.
Ed Hawthorne from the AFL-CIO.
Yes.
Erica Smith from Renetics Bio.
Yes.
Jay Williams from the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving. Jeffrey Flax from Hartford Healthcare. John Murphy, I know you already made the motion.
Yes.
Yeah. From Nuvance, that was. Joseph Gianni from Bank of America.
Approved.
Thank you. Judy Olean from Quinnipiac University.
Bethany Zemba for Judy Olean, yes.
Okay. Kathleen Szilard or Eileen Komar or Sal Mancino from Stanford Hospital. Kelly Valeries.
Here, yes.
Carrie Hone from, I think she was not going to be,
No, I'm here now,
Okay.
and I'll abstain because I was not there on the 8th.
okay, thank you, Carrie. Dr. Leslie Torres Rodriguez from Hartford Public Schools.
Yes.
Leticia Colon de Mejas or Lillian Bowe from Energy Efficiency for All. Maggie Hulse or Jack Mahoney from Indeed.
Yes.
I'm voting yes. Michelle James from the Community Action Agency of Western Connecticut.
Yes.
Molly Kellogg, I think she was not going to be in the first part, from Hubbard Hall. Dr. Manette Ferguson,
Yes.
Neil O'Leary, Mayor Neil O'Leary. Paul Costello from IBEW,
Yes.
Mayor Peter Nystrom,
Yes.
President Salve or Richard Jacob from Yale.
This is Peter Salovey, yes.
Thank you. President Merrick or Gladys Kersaint from UConn. Ray Pinal from Mohegan Gaming. Rohan Freeman from Freeman Associates. Dr. Sal Menzo from Goodwin University.
Yes.
Shane Eddy or Peter Holland from Pratt & Whitney.
Shane it here.
Great. Sharon Barr from Alexion. Shelley Davis from the AFL-CIO.
Good afternoon. I abstain. I wasn't here.
Okay. Steve Sullivan or Jonathan Harris from Eversource.
Yes.
Sirish Mothswamy from Tata Consultancy. Alice Pritchard for the CSCU.
Here, I'll abstain as well.
Okay. Tina Ocasio from the AFL-CIO.
Yes.
Representative Tony Walker. And Taiwana Tally Rushing.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Now we are ready to kind of start the business part of the meeting. Before I go over the agenda, we're going to introduce a new feature into the meeting, which is we're going to be taking a poll today at different points in the meeting to give voice to our participants, which looks like we now have over 160, 150. We want to get a better sense of who we have in the audience, and also we're going to be asking different questions at different points. So, Laura, do you want to put up the first poll question? And you can just simply kind of click on whichever one represents you. Or please let me know when you have that done or ready to move on.
Like we have about 80% of the folks have registered their vote. Let's give everybody a
couple more seconds to figure out the new feature. We have a couple more polls to go, so you got to get good at it by the end of the meeting. %. All right, I'll give you all about 10 more seconds. All right. Go ahead and share the results. You all see the results?
Yeah, very interesting results here. It really just goes to show you the diversity of the participants in our quarterly meetings, you know, that we were well represented across the private sector, education, government, and community. So that to me is very encouraging because it really, in building an effective workforce system, it really takes everybody's participation. So that's really great. Now I'm going to go over the agenda for today. We're first going to hear an update from Kelly Valeries on several topics, including Career Connect, the regional sector partnerships, and by the way, and I'll let her just tell the details of it, the exciting news about our April meeting and workforce summit. We're going to have our first in-person gathering since pre-COVID of this council. So I'll let her kind of talk about that, as well as the fantastic kickoff we had last week of the Business Partnership Initiative. After Kelly, we're very excited to be hearing from our Deputy Commissioner of Labor, Mark Pizzello, as well as our 5 Regional Workforce Development Board CEOs, who will describe and share the latest updates about our overall workforce system. And this is very important for this group because the Governor's Workforce Council serves as Connecticut's state workforce board under the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, the federal act. As a result, it's very important for all of us to understand how our formal workforce system operates. And it's all of our role to connect businesses, educators, community-based organizations to the important work that goes on with our 5 regional workforce boards. This system, often terms referred to as the WIOA system, which is the abbreviation of that act, is the core of our workforce system. Every year, the state of Connecticut receives between $25 to $30 million to fund activities through the regional workforce boards, including the American Job Centers, to support their core missions of helping people prepare for and get employed. I'm sure you'll find the presentation and panel discussion very informative. It's also important to remember that we operate within a multifaceted workforce system. The Office of Workforce Strategy, led by Kelly, coordinates programming and policies at a statewide level. The GWC sets the strategies and helps to oversee the WIOA system. And the business community, education community, and many CBOs all play really key roles in the workforce system. We need to be obviously employ people. We need to be able to train and educate people. One of the roles of this council is to better coordinate all of these efforts so that we can leverage the resources that are available to the state and also encourage cross-company and cross-sector collaboration and alignment. Another important part of the system is the regional sector partnerships, which you'll hear about in a minute from Kelly. Next, after that part of the meeting, we'll have a panel discussion, including members of our Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Access Committee, discussing some of the opportunities that they see to expand our talent pipeline through diversifying the talent in our state and through new engagement strategies. And in the final part of our meeting, we're going to hear from Commissioner Beth Bai of the Office of Early Childhood. She will discuss the brand new, just announced Governor's Blue Ribbon Commission on Child Care and Early Childhood Education that was announced by Governor Lamont last week. Now I'd like to turn over the meeting to Kelly.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's so great to see all of you here for our first quarterly meeting of 2023. It's hard to believe that we're now in year 3 of full-blown implementation of the governor's workforce strategic plan. And I want to take this opportunity to thank you all for your continued support and partnership. It does take all of us to implement change and continuously improve the work that we do here on a daily basis throughout all of our stakeholder groups. So again, thank you for your participation and your partnership today. I think we'll have a lot of amazing information to share with you today. We are going to be actively using the chat button in the meeting today. So if you have comments or questions, please post them in the chat. And the OWS team and anyone else who feels like you would like to jump in, please jump in, and we will be monitoring that and responding as we go through the day today, the afternoon. So the first thing I'd like to share with you today is some more information on our regional sector partnerships and the Good Jobs Challenge and kind of where we're at with that. And before we do that, I'm forgetting about our new chat feature. We do have another quick poll, and I'll continue on as we let the poll circulate, and we'll have it pop up. But could you please let us know how many of you are involved in a regional sector partnership, either as a business who's actively at the center of these discussions, or as a support partner, being a educational entity, a community-based organization, an economic organization, a workforce organization. We would love to understand how many are participating in the regional sector partnerships, as these really, we view them as a vehicle for which we can effectively communicate with our businesses on a regional level, and we can understand what their needs are, and we can respond to those needs. And Tracy Ariel, who is overseeing our Good Jobs Challenge grant and our Career Connect grant, and will be engaging in the regional sector partnerships at a coordinating level. We'll be able to put her information in the chat. And if any of you who answer no, we would love for you to contact Tracy, and she will be able to provide more information and connect you into the chats. So as we have that poll going on, and Laura, just pop it up on the screen, when you feel like you've gotten the majority of the responses. We're super excited about the regional sector partnerships, and we've just launched a few additional partnerships in the healthcare segment. So as we look at this now, we have regional sector partnerships in manufacturing across all 5 regions. We have healthcare partnerships in 4 out of the 5 regions. We have tech in 2 regions, in Hartford and Stamford, where the majority of the concentration of our tech companies are, and a regional bioscience collaborative in the New Haven region, which is really where a big concentration of our bioscience community is working. And so these partnerships are the vehicle, as I mentioned, for continuing to communicate and collaborate and to be able to address the regional needs. The Good Jobs Challenge is underway with regards to the contracting process. To remind all of you, we were super excited as OWS worked with all of the regional sector partnerships on a very collaborative application to the Good Jobs Challenge. We were one of 32 awardees with the largest individual award of $23.9 million. I still wish they added that 100,000 so we could call it a cool 24 million, but we're extremely happy to be able to be the largest recipient of this award. There was 509 applications to this grant. A team of us went to DC several weeks ago for the first convening of the awardees. And what was really special about this convening is that we had visits from Secretary Raimondo, Secretary Walsh, and Secretary Cardona over the 2 days that we were in DC. And I think the message that was very resounding in the purpose of this grant was to build the three-legged stool between workforce, commerce and business, and education, knowing that it takes all three of these entities for us to really build out the processes, systems, and programs necessary to provide the talent pool necessary to fill the jobs and opportunities in our businesses, but also to really focus in a meaningful way on how do we expand the pipeline, the talent pipeline. How do we make sure that we're reaching out to historically underserved and marginalized populations and providing the opportunity for their economic mobility and to bring their talent into our workforce system in Connecticut. So I believe that we received the largest grant application because of the foundational work that we've done through the Governor's Workforce Council, through the establishment of the strategic plan, and through the implementation of regional sector partnerships. Another opportunity we had to go to DC just a week and a half ago was to the National Governors Association. And this was a biannual meeting of my counterparts throughout the country. There was 32 states that were represented at the 2-day conference. And Connecticut really is out front of every other state on where we stand with regards to moving our state workforce board to being very strategic focused. And we have a very robust plan, a strategic plan for this. Other states are either in the process of reorganizing their state workforce boards to be more strategic, and some have some strategic plans that they have just completed, but I don't believe that any of them were really as robust as we have here in Connecticut. So we're super proud of the work that we've done here in partnership with all of you, and looking forward to expend these funds out. So the majority of the funding is kind of split around $2 million to each of the regional sector partnerships, with very specific plans to address workforce development and bringing more people into the workforce. So over the course of 3 years, we will be training an additional 2,000 people to fill the amazing jobs that we have available for people in Connecticut. So if we go to the next slide, and that would be great. And again, any questions or comments, please pop them into the chat. Secondly, I'd like to give you an update on Career Connect. We're really excited that these programs are starting to launch in earnest as of January. We had a few programs that started early, and I want to acknowledge Leticia, who popped in a nice message into the chat from Energy Efficiency for All, who was first out of the gate with her amazing training program and completed her first cohort group. And we have the Building Trades Institute that also was first out of the gate last fall, graduating their first cohort group. Currently, we have attracted over 2,700 people into the portal to sign up for job training programs. One of the requirements once you get into the portal is to take a skills assessment. So over 1,500 people have completed the skills assessment. It's a questionnaire of 16 questions, really looking at cognitive and emotional and skills-based competencies, not in a way to screen people out, but in a way to understand where they're coming, what their entry-level skills are coming in, so that we can provide the most comprehensive supports necessary to ensure that they successfully complete programs and are successful in their job placements and growth opportunities. So we're very excited that this is happening. And we're doing a lot of analytics on the background. So for example, we've taken a look at every one of the skills assessment questions and looked at how people are answering those questions. And is there any question that people aren't just getting, that everyone's kind of messing up on because maybe the question wasn't written in a concise and clear manner? And we've identified like a few minor tweaks of questions that we're going to be doing to the skills assessment, but overall it is really meeting the expectations that we set forth, that a minimum of 70% or a minimum of 80% of people would complete the assessment with a 70 or above, and we're finding that to be very true. We've also been able to identify and refer over 2,000 people to job training programs throughout the different programs that are available to date. More programs will continue to come online as they are developed and ready for implementation. And that 50% of the residents or applicants are under the age of 44. So we've been very interested in paying close attention to the marketing campaign and where that marketing campaign is being received and how we're driving traffic into the portal and into the splash page. So a lot of background work is being done to understand where we need to enhance or make changes or additions to our marketing program to ensure that we're driving the people that are most affected by COVID and who are those who really need upskilling and reskilling into these good jobs. So again, our goal over the course of the next 3 years is 6,000 people, and with 1,000 to be completed by the first quarter, 2,000, I'm sorry, there's a typo here. It's 2,000 to be placed in jobs by the end of this year. And we encourage all of you to sign up in the portal. We ask if you're going in to test the portal out that next to your name, if you write test as part of your name, so we know that we won't send people out to outreach to you. I think you'll be really amazed to see the robustness of the tools that are within that portal. And we're looking forward to continuously adding those more features to the portal as we go. So in the next slide, you'll see some of the demographics. So, you know, we're close to a 50-50 gender match here. And we're really looking at kind of robustly hitting the different age demographics. We were a little surprised that that the over 55 category had kind of the biggest chunk, but we will continue to hone in our marketing and our campaign to ensure that we are reaching out to all demographics are coming into the portal. And you'll see down below, there's one snapshot of one of our marketing pieces in the U campaign. We're really excited to hear that people are talking about places that they've seen the marketing campaign robustly throughout to Connecticut. And you'll see there the impressions and clicks on social media. We will be adding TikTok to our social media and continually kind of honing in on our marketing. But if we click to the next page, you'll see where demographically throughout the state we're getting the most hits. And we'll be using this map, which is actually when there's a live link to this map and you can kind of click on each of these dots, we can hone in really closely to neighborhoods and parts of the state that may not have as much connectivity to the media campaign as we would like them to have. But again, this campaign has just really launched in earnest in January. So I think for where we're at early in the campaign, that we're doing well, but we've also identified areas in which we will be doing additional targeted marketing. Okay, and so next I'd like to provide a brief update on our bond funding. So through legislation, Office of Workforce Strategy was provided a bond allocation of $40 million with the first allocation of $5 million happening last year. We've been working closely with all of our partners on the best way in which to utilize these bond dollars. The goal of these bond dollars was to support things that were not funded either through our Career Connect funds or through our WIOA funds. And these are things that are important to supplementing and standing up those programs. So first, working on adult basic education. WIOA provides funding, fairly robust funding for adult education, around $20 million a year. But in order to be eligible for this, adults have to have a high school diploma, or do not have to have a high school diploma, excuse me. They do not have a high school diploma or efficiency to be able to take advantage of these funds to get their high school diploma or equivalent. There's a huge population of people. There's approximately 94,000 people in the state of Connecticut that do not have a high school diploma. But there's approximately 600,000 people who are underskilled and underemployed. And many of those residents do have a high school diploma, but are still basic skills deficient. So we're doing two things with this funding. We're working with several of our workforce boards, the adult ed program from the State Department of Education and some community-based organizations, working on an RFP so that we can do some pilot programs on how we can more integrate work-based learning technical skills in with remedial skills, and also providing additional funding to the workforce boards for remediation of basic skills deficiency for those who do have a high school diploma. So there's funding here for a pilot program. The goal here is based on that pilot program to be able to provide additional funding out of the unallocated bond dollars to support this adult basic education work stream. Secondly, we know that transportation is a major barrier for adults and students getting into the workplace. The training programs through WIOA and through Career Connect do provide an opportunity to support transportation needs while people are in training programs. But as soon as they complete that training program, that support goes away. So this is going to be an RFP to look at setting up a fund for alternative transportation. So we know people have cars that might not be registered, cars that might need repairs. They may live in an area without public transportation, so they may need to access Uber on a regular basis or other forms of transportation. We may have people who just don't have a driver's license and they need financial support to be able to overcome their transportation barriers. We're even looking at, can we provide low to no interest rate loans to buy, a good used car. So we're excited about releasing that RFP in the very near future and really understanding what we can do here to improve and provide an opportunity for people to have access for funding to support transportation. And then next, we also understand that, our data system is very important, that we continue to build out data systems that provide the opportunity to collect data robustly on all of our initiatives and be able to report out on them robustly. Currently, we have kind of a desperate reporting system. Everyone reports WIOA into CT Hires, but other agencies that do workforce development or other entities, whether they're the workforce boards, educational systems, all kind of report out a little bit differently. And we would like to have the opportunity to collect all that data in one place and provide consistency in the types of data that we're collecting and that we can report on. We also are setting aside some funding here to enhance the Career Connect portal. As I mentioned earlier, we want to continue to be able to provide additional items and features in the portal. The other is an incumbent worker training fund. We know through the Manufacturing Innovation Fund that we have a really good opportunity here to help support small to medium-sized businesses, upskill people who are in their organizations and get them on those next career ladders. And then finally, it's important for us to make sure that we're supporting all of our workforce development initiatives, and we want to bring on 1 or 2 people as a contractor who can go to events and support people being connected to work-based learning programs, including Career Connect and WIOA programs. So we're going to be looking for some people to do that. So it should be a really fun job going out to lots of different events and promoting the opportunities that we have in Connecticut. And then next, we have an update on our workforce summit, as Mark alluded to earlier. If we can flip the slide, please. We are very excited to be hosting a full day summit in partnership with CBIA and CSCU, Ready CT, sponsored in part by Social Venture Partners and Wells Fargo. You'll see the specific information here on the slide, and we'll put a link to the registration in the chat. But this is really an amazing opportunity. We're bringing in some national speakers, Brian Auguste from Opportunity Works and Tamisha Bridges Manfield from Workforce Innovation and Jobs for the Future. So some really exciting speakers. We have a soft acceptance from Secretary Cardona to speak, and we really want this day to be interactive and to bring in the three-legged stool of business education and public-private partners to really move the conversation forward and the action item forward on how we continue to enhance an inclusive workforce ecosystem and provide economic mobility for all, including meeting the needs of our businesses. So more to come here. Please check out the invitation and registration in the chat. And then last but not least, we have as I mentioned, as Mark alluded to earlier, based on all the work that has been done in Connecticut, the National Business Roundtable has identified Connecticut as the first of 1 of 10 states to launch a workforce partnership initiative. Connecticut is home to 10 or 11 large companies, either headquartered here or with a large presence here, that sit on the National Business Roundtable. And we are going to be kind of mobilizing those businesses to engage with the work that we're doing collectively here at the highest level. And so we had a launch meeting last Thursday to a full house, a capacity of 175 people at the National Science Center in Hartford. And it was really an amazing event. We can put up some more information. There's an actual video of the entire event that we can put in the chat for you if you're interested in listening to the panel discussion that happened and some opening remarks from myself, Don Allen from Stanley Black & Decker, and Brian Oakes from Accenture, Mayor Bronin, and then the panel discussion. So it was really an exciting evening, bringing together a lot of our partners. Unfortunately, the governor was not able to attend, but he provided a brief video to address the panel, and I would like the opportunity to play that for you today. So if we could hit the play button, which might sound a little gargly, but we also are putting a link to it in the chat so that you can listen to it later if the audio isn't so great. So launch the video, please.
Lamont, Governor of Connecticut. I want to give a special shout out. Thank you, Business Roundtable, for paying extra special attention to workforce. It is #1 on my agenda, #1 for every employer, #1 for everybody thinking about moving their company to the state of Connecticut. This is what we got to do. We have a statewide workforce program right now, including every single community college, the trades. And what they have done is apprentice programs and intern programs and guaranteed 6,000 jobs. You pass that 18-week certificate program, we guarantee you a job. We're trying to extend that now more in terms of STEM and IT and a variety of other programs. But I want to thank you so much, Roundtable, for making this a priority. First time in my life we have many more jobs. We have people with the skills to fill those jobs. Shame on us if we don't lift everybody up, give them that opportunity, make sure we build those submarines and choppers and F-35s on budget, on schedule. That starts with workforce.
Thanks so much, everybody, for taking a moment to listen to that. And again, it's in the chat if you want to go back and listen to it again or share it. We're really excited about the where we're at with the implementation of the plan and all of our partnerships. And our partnerships are wide and robust, but the Department of Labor and the workforce boards are a very important central partner to the Office of Workforce Strategy and the Governor's Workforce Office. And they are really the, backbone of our workforce development system here in Connecticut. So I would like to take the opportunity here to introduce you to Mark Pozzello. If we can move this, there we go. Thank you. To Mark Pozzello. But before we do that, we're going to do one more poll. And this poll is to please rate your current understanding of the WIOA Workforce Development Board system. There's no judging here. Nobody knows who you are when you make the your choice, but this helps us get an understanding of the of what we can do to make sure that you and everyone else in the state is very familiar with this system and how it greatly benefits all residents of Connecticut and all businesses in Connecticut. And I want to take the opportunity here to introduce Mark Pozzello. He is a deputy commissioner of the Department of Labor and has been working with the WIOA boards for many, many years and comprehensive knowledge of the system. So thank you, Mark, for spending some time with us this afternoon and walking us through what the roles and responsibilities are of the State Workforce Board.
Thank you, Kelly. Thanks, everybody, for giving me an opportunity to provide this overview. I did answer the question as having a comprehensive understanding, so I hope that comes through when I give you this overview. The overview that I'm going to give is really very high level. It would take us hours, if not days, to go through all of the ins and outs, but I'm really hoping that this will be helpful to everybody to understand a little bit more about the state board and the WIOA system in Connecticut. As Mark pointed out, and I think it's worth repeating, WIOA stands for the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. And the significance of that title in the federal legislation is that it provides the structure for our state workforce development system. The slide, I think, that is up right now, let me just look here. Laura, could you go to the next slide, please? So this slide right here is actually the federal regulation citation for the state board responsibilities. I do not intend to go through this section by section. I want to hopefully provide you with just some plain language explanation for what these responsibilities really look like in practice. So I'll start with, you'll see in this citation that section 101 of the legislation is referenced. And that's a significant reference as it relates to the state workforce board for two reasons. One, that section directs the governor of the state to establish or designate a state workforce board specifically for WIOA purposes. And we know in Connecticut that Governor Lamont has established and designated the Governor's Workforce Council as that state board. The second relevant point to that section is that it defines the required members of the state board. And including in that provision is that the state board needs to be a majority led by business and chaired by business. And I think Mark talked about it up front. That's to ensure that the state board is always mindful of what business and industry needs are, so that when we are developing plans and strategies and policies for workforce development programming, we have that in mind and we're looking at what their needs might be. There is significant importance to complying with these requirements as they're outlined, because the state's funding for all titles under WIOA legislation are contingent upon the establishment of a state board and complying with the membership requirements. Mark talked a little bit about the $25 to $30 million. That's under Title I. There are several other titles under WIOA, and that total funding can be anywhere between 60 and $70 million. So it's very important that we are in compliance with all these things. Laura, if you want to go to the next slide, we can talk through, I mentioned all the different titles within this legislation, and there are 5 of them. Starting with Connecticut Department of Labor as the state workforce, the designated state workforce agency, we are responsible for titles 1, 3, and 5. Now, Title I is really the WIOA that I think we all think about when we most often talk about workforce development. It's where the governance for the system, the structure of the system lives, and all of the services and the structure of the system in the local areas lives in terms of providing services to youth, adults, and dislocated workers. We also are responsible for Title III, and that amends a little historical perspective, the Wagner-Peiser Act of 1933, which was established to assist unemployed workers at that time with linking up with job openings so that they didn't have to remain on unemployment benefits for too long. We refer to it as our labor exchange system or employment services. And then Title V is sort of a catch-all of all the general provisions that WIOA changed related to its predecessor, which was the Workforce Innovation Act, or I'm sorry, Workforce Investment Act. Now, we also talked about those other funding streams and the additional funding that comes with the other titles, which are Title II, and that's the Adult Education and Family Literacy Act, which is overseen by SDE. Again, Kelly, you mentioned about $20 million a year. The other title, Title IV, is overseen by the Department of Aging and Disability Services, specific to vocational rehabilitation. Again, another approximate $20 million a year. So there's super significance related to the establishment of, the development of, and the work of the State Workforce Board. Also, a significant point related to the membership of the State Board is that WIOA requires that the lead officials from the 3 agencies that I just spoke about are members of the State Board and are voting members, because that's where all the expertise around the program delivery lives. Now I'm going to get into a little bit about the responsibilities, but try to keep it as high level as possible, and just touch upon some of the real important ones from my perspective. The first one that I want to talk about is that the State Board is responsible for the development of the WIOA state plan. And I do think that there are a lot of folks who would probably agree that there is a heavy emphasis on compliance within that plan. Connecticut's plan alone is 260 pages. And I think there's probably some agreement that there is a little bit of redundancy in some of the information that is provided in that plan. But having said that, I really believe that the planning process does give us a real great opportunity to develop the blueprint for the workforce development system. And I think we've seen that in Connecticut when the governor announced his governor's workforce strategic plan back in 2020. I've had lots of conversations with Mark and Kelly and our commissioner about how that really can fit well into components of the WIOA required state plan. And some of the key components in that state plan is that it talks about the state's current economic conditions. It highlights labor market information regarding the state's growing industries and occupations. It provides the governor's vision and strategy for workforce development, which is really key. And it also sets out the partnerships among all the required partner programs of the system and how they need to work together to deliver services to job seekers and employers alike. State plan itself is a 4-year plan, but it has to be required every 2 years, which is why I wanted to talk about those key components of the state plan. Because the modification is required every 2 years, it allows us to give consideration to possible and impactful changes to those components. I think we can all agree that through the Great Recession, through the pandemic, we saw many things change regarding not just economic conditions, but also how we deliver services to individuals. Who would have ever guessed that we would be put in a situation where our delivery mechanism, which used to be buildings and brick and mortar, would turn into virtual service delivery. So that's a real significant part of our plan. And it gives, like I said, a lot of opportunity to innovate how we provide our services. Keeping in a chronological kind of fashion is once that plan is created, the state board's responsibility is then to provide guidance to the designated workforce development areas in a state. In Connecticut, there are 5 of them. The guidance that is provided directs the local boards in requiring them to develop their local plan and making sure that it aligns with and is consistent with the state plan. But it doesn't require the locals to follow that plan verbatim. It allows for local boards to look at and base their plan on their own specific economic conditions, the prominent industry sectors, and what their job seeker employer needs look like. Because although there's similarities, it is not all the same. And WIOA actually intends for local boards to have that level of autonomy in developing their plans so that they can meet the needs in their specific areas. So keeping with the idea that I'm not going to go through each section, I'm going to chunk B through H all together, because a lot of it is about policy making, development of strategies, performance accountability, compliance with requirements of WIOA, and also continuous improvement of the system. It's worth noting about these policies that are laced in here, because some of them need to come from the state board level and some need to be from the state designated state agency for the specific title. Because again, as I mentioned above, that's where your expertise comes from. So when you put the nuts and bolts together of how a program or service or an activity is going to be delivered, it should be driven from the state agency level. One of the key intents of the whole responsibility around policy development, Mark touched upon this. The state workforce board is responsible to be the facilitator to ensure that the policies and strategies align with the state plan, to ensure that we have collaboration, that we've got a comprehensive workforce system that avoids duplication of services and really clearly delineates the roles within the overall state system. And just a few examples of state level policies that have been issued since the implementation of WIOA. One very critical is a policy related to the development of memoranda of understanding and cost sharing agreements. WIOA requires that all local workforce boards have memoranda of understanding with their required partner programming in the American Job Centers, and that there's also cost sharing agreements. Unlike WIA that encouraged cost sharing, WIOA requires it. And the significance of the state board facilitating that process and directing that process and guiding that process is that it provides the local boards with support when there becomes an impasse related to the MOU or maybe someone, some partner not necessarily understanding or wanting to participate and comply with that MOU requirement. And that's where the state board really helps out that process. Another key policy from the state board is around the certification of our American Job Centers in each of the local regions. Every AJC, whether it's a comprehensive center, which is a center that has all of the required partner programs within it, or it's a satellite, which has some number of those programs. A certification has to be done to meet the requirements as prescribed by WIOA and any others that the state board might feel is important for an American Job Center to have. And that has to be done every 3 years and be recertified. That also allows for flexibility, changes to meet the needs or changes that we might experience in service delivery. One other very important policy is the one-stop system monitoring. And this isn't monitoring a board, it's not monitoring a program. This is the system itself at the local level being monitored to ensure that all of the comprehensive work that needs to be done in a region is being done and provided and aligns with not just the state plan, but also with the local plan to ensure that the job seekers and employers are getting the services that they need. This also has to be done every 3 years. And I bring those up as examples because while they're very specific functions of the state board as outlined in WIOA, not all of the work can be done in a vacuum. It's an imperative that the state board and that the designated WIOA state agencies are working collaboratively with our local boards and other required stakeholders to make sure that whatever the plans are, whatever the policies and strategies are, that they are in place for the best possible outcomes for everyone that we need to serve through our workforce development system. So I hope that gives you a good overview and a good picture of the responsibilities. I'm happy to take any questions, and of course, I could go on for days about this, but I won't.
If anyone has a specific burning question you'd like to ask Mark, please raise your hand and we're happy to take a few minutes to answer some questions, or you can put your questions in the chat as well and we can monitor those questions. And as we move forward in our conversation with the workforce boards, the 5 regional workforce boards, then they'll provide you some additional clarity as well. Cindy, I see you popped up. Do you have a question? No, you're all set. Okay, great. So thank you again, Mark, very much for that. You know, the system is very complicated and we appreciate, you know, you providing us a roadmap and some clarity. And, you know, I think the way we've kind of designed our work between OWS, the Governor's Workforce Council, and DOL is to really be collaborative on the reporting and the compliance component at DOL, with them informing us of those outcomes and then working very closely with them as well on our strategic plan and how we go about implementing that with the workforce boards. So thank you so much, Mark. I hope you'll stay on and you know, take part in any of the conversations that we're going to have with our panels at this time.
Absolutely.
We bring up the intro slide, Laura. Would like to just take a moment to introduce you all to the 5 regional workforce board presidents. We have all of them but one today who is out on vacation, well-deserved. Actually, Bill, I'll let you do the intros. I think it's on your slide. So I'll introduce Bill Villano. He is the president and CEO of Workforce Alliance, the workforce board that serves the greater New Haven region. And Bill has been working at Workforce Alliance and leading that initiative for a very long time. I won't date him because he doesn't like to be, you know, put in an age bracket, but he's only 25 really in reality. So thanks, Bill, for leading this discussion.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you, Kelly, and thank you for inviting us to present today. I'll introduce them when I get to the boards. And I also want to thank Mark Pizzella for not going on forever with state and federal regulations and statutes. Next slide, Laura, we'll just start. Just a little history. The workforce boards were actually put into federal law in 1978. So I guess were 45 years old. They were called private industry councils at the time. And the thought behind that was that as businesses were the end user of the public workforce system product, that they should have a greater say in how programs were designed and things like that. So as Pizzella said about the state board, so is true of the local board, that we are private sector led and we private sector chaired. And there are, obviously a number of other members that are required: economic development, education, organized labor, CBOs, and the like. Fundamentally, the boards are responsible for the design and oversight and accountability of workforce policies and services, at the regional level. And amendments to the law, recent amendments to the law, added local selectmen and mayors as kind of partners in this process as well. They have a role to play in our planning and board appointments and things like that. Next slide, Laura. So here are the 5 workforce boards. You can see that these geographic boundaries were originally aligned with the then local DECD, excuse me, DECD districts that I'm not sure exist anymore. You can see that there are 19 American Job Centers that are strategically located throughout the state. Most of them are operated in partnership with Connecticut DOL, a lot of co-location. There are partners in this process. This is fundamentally the American Job Centers is how the lion's share of the public access our services. And I would say just one thing I'd want to mention is, during the pandemic, we really had to pivot in terms of how we provided those services, in terms of being able to meet the needs of both employers and job seekers. Many of us had to provide laptops and hotspots and other types of either equipment or whatever to allow a lot of people, a lot of our customers, to be able to participate, in this new, hybrid and remote world. Next, Laura. So I'm not going to go over a lot of this, but other than to say that, the only way that we can effectively meet people's needs, effectively provide the services and the necessary supports is, through a partner network. And, this is many of the partners that we deal with. I'm not going to go through each one. I give you 2 examples. The Department of Children and Families and the Youth Service Bureaus are key partners in our summer jobs program, summer youth program. Adult Education does a lot of work with us with the surprisingly high number of people who need remediation. We do boot camps with them. So again, the only way to make this happen is with a strong partner network. Next, Laura. I do want to say that Mark said a lot of people refer to us as the WIOA program or things like that. And while the 3 pieces of the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, WIOA, Adult Dislocated Worker and Youth, and the Jobs First program that serves TANF recipients, while those are a significant portion of all of our funding, the only way that we effectively do this is that we've been successful, I think collectively successful, in competing for individually, collectively, with the state, through a lot of discretionary programs that bring more money into the state that don't have the same prescriptive nature and eligibility requirements of some of the federal and state programs. And so we can serve a broader population by doing that. The Connecticut Youth Employment Program that's there, in the around 2000, the federal government stopped funding standalone summer youth programs, and a few of the boards kept a a small summer program going mostly through support and contributions, private sector contributions, and then a real shout out, if you will, has to go out to Representative Tony Walker and former Representative Marie Kirkley Bay, Tony from New Haven, Marie from Hartford, that were the godmothers of this program and started the state-funded summer program, and it's been funded for a number of years. And I would say that the governor also needs to be recognized, because you'll see in a moment on the slide, he put in additional funding for that program, which is much needed. And why don't we just go to the next slide anyway, Laura? So this list is just a small example of some of the recent programs that are in place. What I would say is that, as I mentioned, both the state and the local boards, individually and collaboratively, are always looking for discretionary grants. Some of the ones that are funding programs now: Department of Justice, Department of Labor, U.S. Department of Labor, Department of Education, HHS, EPA, and philanthropic dollars throughout the state and other national foundations, help do this. The last one here listed, the Connecticut projects, congressional direct funded projects, Senators Blumenthal and Murphy have secured H-1B funding. If you don't all know what the H-1B program is, it's the approval that companies get to be able to bring in a foreign individual to fill the job when they can't find an American worker, and the fees that they pay for those H-1B visas have now been, in some cases, redirected for certain project grants that we've applied for. So I believe that the total amount of money that they are bringing in is another $2 million to the state of Connecticut. Next, Laura. So you see this Connecticut workforce by the numbers, and you see last year, the very first number there, the unique customers served, about 48,000. I would say that mostly pre-pandemic, that number was in the 70 or 80,000 level. And, a couple of things are influencing that. Clearly, COVID, has affected that. We are at full employment, so there's not as many people necessarily looking for services, and the fact that we've had retirements and we've had people who drop out of the workforce. On a national level, there's about 7 million people that are 7 million men, actually, not people, 7 million men that are considered prime working age, 25 to 45, that in that range, that have dropped out of the workforce. So we did see a significant drop in customer base during COVID. We're all beginning to see that return, although it's been much slower than we would like. So these, by the way, they're unique customers. There's no duplication here. So some of the numbers that you see down here, the only duplication is in the place numbers that include summer youth employment placements. But so there's a number of individuals that come, and most of them, as I said, get to us through the American Job Centers. But there are other kinds of events, hiring events, workshops, and things that happen outside the American Job Centers, and all of those individuals are included in these numbers. And you can see the last one, again, with the boards being business majority and business led. We have about 70 businesses of all sizes that participate on our board of directors. Next. So here's summer jobs, and why I talked about it before is that you can see with the blue bar there is the number of applicants we get every summer for the 5-6 week work experience programs, and that orange color is actually who gets enrolled, and you can see that less than 50%, actually less than 40% of the individuals that apply actually get a job. And I would say that the number of applicants in some areas would be greater. I can tell you in New Haven that they have a relatively short window for applications because, you know, they hate turning a lot of people away. So the fact that Tony Walker continues to advocate for this, and the fact that the governor actually increased the amount of money that's going towards the summer program, I believe it's at least doubled. That's gonna make a significant difference in our ability to provide work experience for young people. You know, it's, you know, preparing our future workforce is really critical. And I know you all know this. I mean, we're the 7th oldest state in the country. We have a relatively anemic and even sometimes negative population growth. Last census, we grew 0.9%. I mean, not even 1%. Retirements, you know, out-migration. And if you talk to Patrick Flaherty from the Department of Labor, he'll tell you it's even less about the out-migration of young people. It's more about the fact that they were never born. So being able to get, you know, who we have engaged and start working. And the good thing about the summer program is we can start people at 14. So, you know, a lot of people at that age, you know, get their first experience in a private sector. I mean, I'm sorry, in a public sector organization, you know, and kind of learn the whole idea of what's expected in the workplace and that kind of thing, and, you know, and maybe the beginnings of a skill. And by the time they're 17 or 18, you know, we can put them in a better job. We can put them in a private sector spot. So it's really critical. And again, you know, thanks to Tony and thanks to the governor. Okay, next one. So you know, as we said before, there are 5 workforce boards in the state. We formally, you know, organized in 1997, became another 501c3. You know, we meet monthly. We meet to share information, to discuss the collaborative efforts that we're doing, problems, issues. You know, it's a very sharing process. We also have a group, kind of a more informal group of the senior administrative people in each board, which we affectionately call the Brain Trust. And those are the individuals that, excuse me, get deal with much more of the in the weeds, you know, specific, you know, regulatory policy issues that go along with implementation. You know, I want to thank you know, Kelly here, because she has worked very closely with us on all of these things, with CARES Act and now with Career Connect, and we've been able to discuss a lot of the challenges and collectively reach an agreement on how to do that. So it is clearly you know, a true definition of partnership and collaboration with what we've been doing there. You know, and I think that really the evolving nature of Career Connect and the success we've had so far is due to that partnership between OWS and the Workforce Development Council. Next slide here. So we gave a couple of examples of statewide collaboration, and one that you know, started way back when, and a couple that are, you know, kind of more recent. So the STEM jobs grant, which was, you know, over 10 years ago, started with my good friend John Beauregard in the East, who led the statewide application there. And among other things, what it did was allow us to add online learning to what we did here in the boards. And we had really never done that. John was first to do that, and it really gave us an opportunity to have people have another option on to how they can get a certification or information on career options and things like that. So it was a good example of something that's, you know, some time ago that has actually helped us when the governor in his Skill Up program, when the CARES Act came into place right at the beginning of the pandemic, and he wanted to be able to serve more people. He was able to do that by building on the online learning that had already been in place. These next two grants, WorkPath and Chifa, I want to say could not happen without Betty Weintraub. And many of you know Betty. She's been around you heard Kelly talk about transportation and some of what's happening there. The WorkPath Fund was started when Betty was at Liberty Bank Foundation, and she put together a group of philanthropic organizations and funded WorkPath, which essentially was designed to address the needs of people who probably were just outside of the eligibility for a lot of programs that we do, or had just become employed and potentially not eligible. But it tried to address that one thing that they needed to help them either get a job or keep a job, you know. And Kelly mentioned like transportation, where somebody needs to get their car registered or insured, or they needed new tires or something, and that would get them to work and allow them to either get or keep the job. And it did other types of supports. You know, a lot of daycare providers required an upfront amount of money, you know, almost like a security deposit on a rent. So we were able to do those kinds of things. Betty moved on to Chifa and implemented the same program there. And there was another $1 million that came through Chifa that allowed us to do that. So I really do want to I want to give Betty a lot of thanks. And I want to say that we now include those kind of supports in most of our grant applications. And fortunately, you know, many of them have been funded in order to be able to help people, you know, get or keep a job. Next. This is a couple of examples of things that were a little bit more recent in terms of, you know, kind of examples of statewide collaboration. The H-1B program, which I just talked about, that grant was led by Alex Johnson, Capital Workforce Partners, and it's designed to help people get into manufacturing and the IT program. You know, Skill Up Connecticut is, you know, we also just talked about it. That was the online learning, and EWIB, the Eastern Workforce Board, was the lead on that. This Statewide Accessible Workforce Services, SAWS, just to give you guys another acronym that you have to learn, is designed to brand the AJCs. It's to have consistent messaging put out and to align some of the processes that happen. So again, that we are collectively more of a system than we even are now, and to strengthen that. And then, you know, obviously, Career Connect, which is, you know, OWS led, really is taking a lot of what we learned and helping us to either further align and further strengthen our system. And, you know, and that's been a goal of Kelly's all along, is just to make, you know, our Connecticut systems stronger. Next. Okay, I'm not going to go over any of this because it's a lot on this slide. But what I would say about all of this is that what's in the governor's plan is being localized through a lot of these initiatives. We are bringing more partners to the table in these processes, and we're taking some of the best practices and bringing them statewide and incorporating them into the state plan. And again, I would say that's been kind of one of the mantras of Kelly, is trying to build on what works and make it available to, you know, everybody throughout the state. And last one. Okay, so I just do remember that when I was on the slide showing the regions, I was supposed to introduce my counterparts, which you will see here. Wait, yeah, stay there. One is Joe Carbone from the Workplace, Alex Johnson from Capital Workforce Partners. Well, let me just say, you know, the Workplace is kind of our Gold Coast, you know, Fairfield County down to the border. Capital Workforce Partners is one of the largest, all the northern region. the Northwest Regional Workforce Board, Kathy Awad, Waterbury, Danbury, Torrington is her region. EWIB, who is the relatively new person, Mike Nogello, who is on vacation, and Guy Saporito, who is the Chief Financial Officer there, and another long-term person is sitting in for him. And many of them have long-term jobs. So if you could just go back to the other slide for a second, Laura. Yeah. So I just want to say on this that the operative word here on this slide is system. Yes, the boards and our state partners, are the foundation of Connecticut's workforce delivery system. The two things there about responsive to the needs of residents, and committed to accessibility. COVID really taught us that we had to implement different outreach and program delivery services if we were truly going to meet the needs of individuals. So that is ongoing. Many of us have DEI initiatives going on as well. And I guess I would just say that all of this is designed, to make our system stronger and more responsive to both job seekers and employers. And that's what we are committed to, and committed to doing that with the Office of Workforce Strategy, Department of Labor, and our other partners. So
Thanks so much, Bill.
thank you. Did I go over my time? I tried to do
Oh,
it quick.
just a few, but it's so hard. There's so much information and so many things to share. So we really appreciate your in-depth
Yes.
discussion of what is happening in the workforce boards. And we're excited to spend the next approximately a few minutes, about 17 minutes or so left on addressing some specific questions to each of the board members. So first, I'd like to start with Kathy. Kathy's from the North Regional Workforce Investment Board and has really been leading robust conversations in two of our regional sector partnerships. So Kathy, can you talk a little bit about how the regional sector partnership is helping better inform training programs in your region and making connectivity between employers and the workforce system on a higher level?
Sure. Thank you, Kelly. As you might recall, back in August of 2020, we had a great presentation. I think it was prior to the August kickoff from the Next Gen Partner Strategy folks that were brought in. We were asked at that time to put together some regional sector partnerships and to be thoughtful about which industry sectors we would use. We put together, as you know, the regional sector partnership strategy involves a convening team, a core team, and then all of the industry partners. Our convening team is primarily led by the Workforce Board, the Northwest Regional Workforce Board, with the aid of additional convening partners, the three major chambers in our region, Greater Waterbury Chamber, the Greater Danbury Chamber, and the Northwest Connecticut Chamber. Together, the four of us set out to create our core team. The core team is a series of state and local partners. We have on our core team our community college systems. We have regional economic development directors from the majority of the communities that make up our region. We have our other training partners outside of the community college system. We have our state agencies. We have DOL involved in there, very important partner in our regional sector partnerships as we work with industry to meet their needs. So the core team got together. We looked at the data. We made a data-informed decision to select manufacturing primarily, and then about a year later, we launched our healthcare one. So our manufacturing partnership kicked off in February of 2021. We had, at that time, a few invited industry leaders that we felt would help champion the cause. We're pleased to say that Molly Kellogg, who sits with you on the Governor's Workforce Council, is one of our primary industry champions in our manufacturing healthcare, along with other large corporations, smaller and medium-sized manufacturing across multiple disciplines. This is not unique to one discipline in manufacturing. It crosses multiple disciplines. So we're pleased to have folks from BD, the world's syringe maker, from Kimberly-Clark, who makes every tissue in the world, So we've got smaller manufacturers like Concentric Tool and a variety of other manufacturing partners that have actively engaged. At our last partnership meeting, we had over 70 active engaged industry partners who formed themselves into 7 different action teams. Each of those action teams is led by the industry. We sit beside them outside the table as core and convening partners to work with them to meet the action plans that they set out for themselves. And yes, to your point, Kelly, they are about workforce needs, but they're also about other issues such as transportation barriers that prevent workers from getting to work. So there's extremely active. We have been extremely successful. We have engaged those industry partners to the extent that they, like us, are anxiously waiting for us to be able to dot the I's and cross the T on the Good Job Challenge funding that will support much of the work that they have set off for themselves in branding their partnerships, marketing, engaging new employers to participate in that manufacturing, and again, addressing the training needs, creating the youth pipeline, creating a speakers bureau, industry sector driven to go into the high schools and even into the middle schools to promote good career pathways in manufacturing. That's been up and running, as I said, since February of 21. In March of 22 last year, we launched our healthcare partnership. At our initial launch, we had over 30 high-level healthcare partner industry representatives from a cross-section of healthcare industries. It wasn't just the hospitals, it was the skilled nursing facilities, it was the rehab centers, it was the substance abuse clinics, it was across multiple disciplines, and they too have come together and set 3 very aggressive action plans that they are leading the cause on. We have a unique internship program that was run last year at St. Mary's Hospital in Waterbury that is now poised to be launched across the region to engage high school students in a pipeline. We're looking at how do we attract youth and young adults and older adults to enter healthcare trainings. So there's just an awful lot of opportunity, but I think to your point and to what the mission of a sector partnership is, it is industry-led, and we are supporting it. We are supporting it as a convener, and the core team supports it from the perspective of addressing what they've identified as the action. So the training needs, the workforce needs, the barriers to getting those folks into a training program or into work. So that's really where we are. Again, we're anxiously waiting to work with OWS to get those funds to the partnerships so that they can continue to take those action plans and implement them. I think the other piece that we recognize, as does industry, the Good Jobs Challenge money is the beginning to get these launched to a greater degree. Industry, I think, as it sees itself drive their own needs, will then rise to be able to sustain these after the Good Jobs Challenge money goes away. But I think they need the support of what we're doing now so that they see the value down the road. And it's really been a great opportunity for us. Our staff is very empowered, and I know some of the staff today is up in Hartford continuing to learn on how to expand these partnerships. So we're very excited about the future, and we wanted to take the time to share that with everyone today.
Thank you so much, Kathy. We so appreciate all your work and your leadership and all of your partners and businesses that are involved in your regional sector partnerships. And, you know, what Kathy shared with you is, you know, 1 out of the 5 regions. So take the work that's being done there and multiply that across the state, and you'll really see the multiplier effect of these regional sector partnerships. And next, I'd like to talk with Alex from the Capital Workforce Partners. And Alex, could you tell us about the Workforce Board's collaborative planning process that resulted in Connecticut receiving a $10 million H-1B grant? And can you talk about how the Workforce Board supports such special populations such as at-risk and in-school and opportunity youth? Oh, you're on mute.
I do this every time. I apologize. But thank you, Kelly, for having this forum and this conversation. First, before I answer the question, just want to thank Kathy Awad, because I think she gave us all an overview of the work and the commitment that the workforce boards are making to the regional sector partnerships. And yes, you could just basically take her explanation and multiply it by 5, because we're all doing the same work and supporting our regional sector partnerships, ensuring that employers are not just at the table, but own the process, are leading the process, and really guiding the work of the workforce system. But to your question around the grant opportunity, what I wanted to really just kind of emphasize here is that even though we are 5 individual organizations, we really work hard to really act as one, particularly as we think about building and designing a workforce system that meets the needs of all of Connecticut residents. So we work hard and we work closely together to really try to leverage each other's talents, energies, and in a way that supports this effort. And I just wanted to speak about one item in particular. And there was an opportunity in actually 2019 where the Department of Labor, ETA, put out a solicitation under the H-1B funding grants to solicit for innovative programs that are demand-driven, meet the needs of our business sector, business community, but at the same time, recognize the needs of our job seekers for not only entry-level employment, credential-based training, but also incumbent worker training. So as the collective body of the 5 workforce boards, we individually looked at the solicitation. But as we looked at it individually, we also agreed and began to talk about that this also creates an opportunity for us to collaborate and work statewide and leverage the talents of each of us and the employee relationships that we have in our regions to leverage a more thoughtful and more comprehensive and more competitive application. So through that process, we agreed and we formed a planning process in partnership with, as Bill mentioned, our brain trust that really kind of dive in to make sure that we're organizing the process of procedures and the goals. But this solicitation really, required that we think about who is going to lead this effort, what sectors were we going to recognize, and also at the same time, to sort out, where we could do things on a statewide basis and what was required to be delivered regionally. And through that process, I'm just, really honored that the group really asked Capital Workforce Partners to lead this effort, in part because we were, coming off of an H-1B grant that we had implemented successfully. And it was believed that Capital Workforce Partners would be a competitive applicant on behalf of the 5 workforce boards in the state of Connecticut to apply for this funding. So as we contemplated, the sectors, obviously, we're all committed to supporting the manufacturing sector, but I would also say that we were forward thinking and that we also were seeing the emergence of IT as a critical sector. So we agreed that this grant opportunity would focus on manufacturing, ensuring that we provided supports, particularly for incumbent workers in manufacturing sector to help skill them up, and at the same time, support our entree into the IT sector. So as we built this application, the good news is that we leveraged the talents of all the 5 boards, and in doing that, we were able to work with our statewide partners, our community colleges, our CBO partners, our state agency partners, and we were able to get commitments of $8.7 million as leverage resources to support the effort. So we were able to get $8.7 million of leverage resources. I would note that of that 8.7, 4 million of it were employer supports. So we clearly had employers at the table, employers ranging from Sikorsky to EB, to a variety of employers. We ultimately received 28 commitments from manufacturing employers, including 3 of our statewide manufacturing associations. We received 23 commitments from IT companies, such as Emphasis, Synchrony, Accenture, and others to support in making commitments that they would interview and hire the successful trainees. And what this process unveiled is that it really showed that as we work collectively as a body, we're able to really leverage each other's talents and assets to really build a competitive application. And that process really demonstrates the collective and commitment of all of our workforce development board leaders. Note that, of hundreds of applications that were submitted, we were one of 19 that was ultimately funded, but more important, the maximum that you were able to request was 10 million. So we were one of 5 that received the maximum. So I really just wanted to highlight and uplift that, as individual bodies, we work hard to work together to support the needs of Connecticut businesses and well as job seekers. And then quickly, Kelly, on your second question around supports to young people, Bill did speak a lot in his presentation around the work that we do in terms of connecting with schools, connecting with community-based organizations to really provide meaningful summer job experiences. We do this in a way to ensure that our young people have opportunities for work-based learning that complements the learning that they're achieving in the classroom. But I also wanted to just note that with our Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act funding, we do have targeted funding for Opportunity Youth. And we're really pleased that we are able to provide a full array of supports to young people, everything from case management supports to career development supports to training and industry recognized credentials. We're required that each young person receives a work-based learning experience. And then we also ensure placement into the area where they've been trained for. The good news about this program is that it's very comprehensive and it's provided under the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. But the challenge for us, and just wanted to note, and I know, your committees are looking at this issue, that we're relying solely on federal funds, and it really does not give us the capacity that we need to support Opportunity Youth specifically. It was mentioned at a previous meeting that we have 42,000 Opportunity Youth in Connecticut. These are young people normally between the ages of 18 and 24 who are out of work and out of school. So getting that population connected, integrated, and part of the workforce is something that we all believe is essential. And we're really working hard to deliver this support. But again, we also need to continue to be successful with leveraging and attracting other funding streams, because that is a critical population if we're going to build the workforce of not just today, but as well as tomorrow. And I just
Thanks,
want to
Alex.
quickly.
I know there's so much to say and not enough time to say it all,
Right.
but
I know
think
we're running
the-
late, but just thank you for that. And I just wanted to end that even though we focused on young people, and I know, my partner Joe and all of my other colleagues were also doing a lot of work with supporting our reentry population as well. So I just wanted to note that for future conversation.
Great. And I know we're running just a little bit close to tight on time, but I definitely want to make sure we give Joe an opportunity to share a little bit about how Career Connect is enabling him to scale the Southwest Healthcare Career Academy statewide and to train individuals on entry-level healthcare roles. So Joe, if you could take us home here on this and share with us the work that you're doing, we'd love to hear it. And you are on mute.
I'll try to do it in 2 minutes too, Kelly. Our program in Southwestern Connecticut is based in healthcare. And I don't think any sector of our economy has evolved more or been restructured or resettled than healthcare. And it's also it's clear proof. It doesn't matter if it's recession or prosperity, the jobs keep on developing. And in terms of creating opportunities of social value, of people being brought into middle-class jobs that produce income that can obviously help them and help their families. We embarked about 12 years ago to apply for a grant from HHS. It was called the HBOG program, and it was intended to focus on people that were on TANF or poor in general and give them a chance to develop careers in healthcare. Probably one of the best real decisions that we made at the workplace, because that program provided us an opportunity to be holistic in the way in which we worked with people who were coming through the program. And when I say holistic, we developed the concept of a conseillere, so that when a person was admitted to the program, they had an individual at the American Job Center at our healthcare facility who would be responsible to help them to deal with things like transportation or childcare or other issues that might really prevent them from getting the maximum kind of experience through our program. And in a matter of 11 years, because the program was funded initially for a year and then eventually it was in 5-year periods, I think we changed the industry. I think the conseillere is now being used all across this country, but we had 80% of those who were enrolled, and there were over 3,000 people that were enrolled, over 80% were on TANF. And they had a time frame in which they had really to find a job and develop a career. So I think the numbers are strong, and it became a structure that we're now trying to replicate statewide in Connecticut, building on the successes we had in Southwestern Connecticut. I can tell you a great deal more about it, but out of respect for your calendar here, we'll defer that for another time. But thank you, Kelly. And we're honored to have this opportunity, and we're committed to making sure that the results are the same as we had in Southwestern Connecticut when we started the program.
Thanks so much, Joe. Greatly appreciate it. And I know we're over, but I would be very remiss to leave out Guy, who has been waiting patiently to talk a little bit about how the Connecticut Manufacturing Partnership Initiative is being scaled across the state to support the needs of manufacturers. So, so Guy, I don't mean to cut you short, but if you could give us
I'll
a
try to go
overview.
short.
Thanks.
You know, I just want to go over a couple of the key design principles, you know, of the pipeline for those in attendance. You know, first off, the whole pipeline came to fruition after a planning grant several years ago. We were able to secure some funding partnering with the Connecticut Department of Labor, and it came online in 2016. It's a demand-driven pull system rather than the push system that kind of had been in place. We had put together a group of employers, a former association, you may recall, Kelly, that today now is called an RSP, that existed many years ago, with academia, to basically get them together to align what was being taught to what was actually needed by the employers, thus the pull versus the push of the product. Some of the key design principles there is basically aligning the workforce competencies to the employer's jobs by raising the baseline of those specified skills. Extremely strong engagement by employers for the design elements, assessment, curriculum, scheduling. Demand-driven, the biggest one. Class schedules are based on real-time hiring needs by the employers. The participants that do get enrolled attend a short-term, however, intensive training, 5 days a week, ranging between 5 and 10 weeks based on the actual trade that they're going to at the community college. And to ensure that successful completion, all participants receive support services to allow them to attend the training, and those successfully that complete the training receive a stipend. And of course, the major component and design principle is a job at completion. Just a quick recap on the results since implementation in 2016. Over 2,900 job placements at a 90% placement rate. To promote career pathways, which was a product of this program, graduates receive pre-apprentice certification via CTDOL. Another key result, 80% of the participants had no prior manufacturing experience, basically addressing the green labor market. Employers have seen their attrition rates from the traditional hire channel, seen a big reduction from the old hiring off the street, doing it themselves. And many of employers have said that they look to hire for character and train for skill. Some of them referring eligible candidates or even making reverse referrals, contingent offers of completing the training. So quickly, I just wanted to show this slide and had Laura put it up just to show you the effects of what we are dealing with on demand. We're basically working with employers and scheduling classes by trade based on demand versus just doing them themselves. So, you know, pretty much prior to the pandemic, I showed the last 6 years here. We did 25 and 17, and heaven behold, you know, when we had the shutdown and lost about 14 weeks from March to really the end of the fiscal year in June of 20, we lost about 9 classes. We would have been about 20. Once things started to reopen, somewhat get back to normal, 22. And heaven behold, in our fiscal year, program year 21, 22, we more than doubled that, 49 cohorts, which is an astronomical amount, and the capacity and the collaboration with the community college where the training is conducted was, you know, we thought that number was, wow, how do we pull off 49? That's a lot of classes running concurrently, double shifts, etc. This year, once again, the demand is very strong here in Eastern Connecticut between what has been completed, in progress, and scheduled. We may hit 82 cohorts on a July to June basis. I guess the second part is how are we keeping up with that demand? And I'll go quickly. The simple line is we're primarily focusing on supply. And when I mean by supply, first, the supply of financial resources. To pull off 82 cohorts, anyone here, we've seen enough proposals in budgets. It's an astronomical amount, and this is just one fiscal year. So, you know, we're fortunate we can braid both state, federal, philanthropic funds to meet the demand, but we closely have to monitor either A, expiring contracts, or B, contracts that could be subjective to some budget revisions. And the other form of supply, and the most important, if everyone's talked about it, is workers. You know, Eastern Connecticut is not a heavily populated area. It stretches a lot of square miles that the population is in there. So A, we're collaborating with partners, employers, stakeholders on outreach and recruitment. It's truly a community-wide effort. We're also working to attract populations unrepresented in manufacturing. Also, some years ago, quickly here, we had some philanthropic foundations to the tune of nearly $1 million that started up our program here in the high schools, what we refer to as the youth manufacturing pipeline. And I'm happy with the state's hard work and OWS. We're going to be able to sustain that, expand it, enhance it through the Good Jobs Challenge, and also expand it to healthcare as well. Career Connect. And this will be my last point. The expansion on the MPI program led by all 5 of the boards here will assist with funding. Your extreme outreach campaign can only help meet the needs. But quickly, the MPI program might have originated here in Eastern Connecticut, but it's been meeting the needs from the state for job seekers and employers since inception. Last soundbite. Since inception, the participants that completed training came from 122 towns, or 72% of all the towns in the state of Connecticut. Employers who hired graduates came from 86 towns, or 51% of the 169 towns that are designated as cities or towns. That number actually increases to 164 on the participants and 104 on the employers, if you count the little villages, boroughs, and other designated areas. So it's not an Eastern program, it's truly a statewide program. And Career Connect and the collaboration with the others is only going to help Connecticut's demand for manufacturing workers.
Thank you so much, Guy, and thank you for all of the work you've put in. And I am a little biased because I was on your board for many years and helped with this program, and really am proud to see where it has gone to. So thank you. And thank you to all of our board presidents for sharing all your great work that you're doing and the collaborative approach between all the partners. Greatly appreciated it. And so next up, I'm going to turn it over to Anthony Barrett, and Anthony is going to lead a really robust conversation around the DEI work that he's leading. Anthony, take it away.
All right, thank you, Kelly, and good afternoon or good evening, everyone. So we're going to have a really well-esteemed panel discussion on advancing workforce equity and promoting an inclusive environment for all. In starting that conversation, advancing workforce equity is an important goal that requires thoughtful, designated policy and initiatives to ensure everyone has access to the same opportunities. This involves recognizing disparities in access to resources such as education and training, equal pay for equal work, advancing diversity in hiring practices, and creating a safe and equitable workplace. Only by understanding the complexities of discrimination can we effectively create strategies that bring us closer to true equity and inclusion. So as Kelly mentioned, I oversee a lot of our diversity, equity, and inclusive initiatives. We have 5 subcommittees that I help support, chaired by some wonderful thought leaders, one supporting veterans, one supporting youth, one supporting persons with disabilities, veterans, if I haven't mentioned it, and reentry population, as well as the BIPOC population. And it's truly about how do we build an inclusive and environments where people can shine from regardless of their backgrounds and gender identity. So I'd like to introduce our esteemed panel. First, we have Wes Alexander, who is the Vice President of Workforce Solution at the Travelers Company. And second, Mary Ann Mimi Haley, Executive Director of the National Youth Employment Coalition. And then lastly, Ms. Joanne Price, co-founder and managing partner of Fairfield Capital Partners. And I'll kick it off by having, the first question, I'll kick it off with Wes. Please describe your current role as Vice President of Workforce Solutions at Travelers. And then second part of that question, what steps should employers take to create an inclusive environment for all employees, regardless of race, gender, or background?
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. Thanks you all for having me. I think it's really important that I describe what my function is, particularly given the title as Workforce Solutions. It probably is not intuitive to many of you on the phone, so let me just spend a couple seconds. So my department was created about 2.5 years ago. And when I describe what it is that I do, what I really tell people is that my goal, the whole underlying function is designed to support, promote, and create spaces, safe and brave spaces for employees. So what I mean by that, and I want to be clear, it's not that my department owns the monopoly on safe spaces within Travelers Insurance Company, right? We want people to be able to access their leaders or their HR professionals. We have tremendous amount of resources through our employee relations department and ethics point hotline, complaints, all sorts of places that people can go if they're having issues at work. What we found though over time, I've been with Travelers for 8 years, even though I've only had the privilege of leading this department for 2.5, is that while we have these resources in place and we have an HR department, we have an ER department, and we have these hotlines, many times in a large company like Travelers, we have 30,000 employees, people don't necessarily trust these places, right? And I don't know that that's just a Travelers phenomenon. In fact, I would submit to you that it's not. I think that, there's a stigma many times when people think about going to HR, what that might mean for them, and whether or not they can speak freely, openly, and honestly without fear of retaliation or retribution. So my group was created because my leadership saw a need to be able to create this space, independent from our HR business partners, independent from our ED&I department, but really it's the best way to describe it. It's like the office of the ombudsman, right? A place where just the sheer fact that you came and had a conversation with me or my department, small department of 3, it's confidential and anonymous, and none of us will speak to anyone about your concerns until you give us permission. How do we go about doing this? I'll just briefly kind of lay it out. The first part is what I just described. It's this ombudsman feature. Literally, employees can just reach out. I keep my calendar open, and we are separated from everybody else in terms of our tracking of employees who reach out. We also host focus groups, or what we call sensing sessions, which allows us to be a bridge between how employees are feeling on the ground and how leaders think they're feeling, right? And sometimes it's correct. Sometimes the leaders got it. They know what the issues are. But what we find is many times employees aren't necessarily comfortable bringing up some of the more sensitive things to leadership again, because they're worried about what the end result will be. So what we do is we host these rooms, we keep them safe, we preserve anonymity and confidentiality, and we take those themes, report it back to leadership, and then we consult with leaders to figure out what do we do with this information. A third huge part of what we do is we really serve to try and look at our HR policies and practices to ensure that as we're hiring, as we're doing talent management, as we're deciding how people are going to be compensated, again, we are looking for places where those highly subjective decisions of relating to people in their employment, how can we find ways to see if we can eliminate bias, right? That unconscious bias that we all have, right? Are there ways that we can participate or change our policies, make sure that we're running checks to just ensure that everybody's being treated equitably across the board? The last part that I'll mention is that what we've really striven to do is make sure that we can host and create these brave and safe spaces in the form of what we've been calling courageous conversations. Because as we continue to work, as we continue to have new people come into the workplace, what we're learning is that many people, they come into work and they have expectations of being able to discuss some of the things that are happening in the world, because for many of us, it's hard to separate what happens in the world. And all of a sudden it's 9 o'clock and you walk into work and you're supposed to just forget that there was a shooting in your neighborhood, or that there was an event or an overturn of a large case, or something that happened from a racial demographic standpoint that affects you personally, whether you're a member of that race or not. It's hard for many people to be able to turn that off and just go to work and pretend like it didn't happen. I think this kind of works against the traditional way, at least as I think about, I was socialized in order to come to work. I was told there were certain things you don't talk about, right? You don't talk about race. You don't talk about gender. You don't talk about religion or politics or things that could potentially be divisive at work, because everybody was worried that if you do that in an unstructured way, you're going to end up getting sued, right? Or you're going to offend somebody to a point where you can't come back. So what my group does is we put guardrails around these conversations. We make sure that as we talk through those issues, they're experiential and not opinion laden. So we don't have a situation where people are necessarily arguing their own opinions like that old show Crossfire. We don't do that. Instead, what we want to do is allow you to bring your truth to light, and your experience is your experience. There's nothing to argue about. If you're telling or talking about things that you've seen, you've heard, you've experienced, and it serves to allow us to learn about one another and our own experiences through this vehicle. My business case for this is that the better we get to learn one another, the closer that we become one another through learning about our own experiences, we're going to work better together. We're going to fight better on these projects. We're going to assume more positive intent. So we've been hosting these conversations now for the last 2.5 years on a multitude of different topics in a safe way, in order to allow people to really bring their full selves to work. I think your second question was really, how do we ensure that, the workplace remains diverse and equitable and inclusive? And I think, the first thing I would submit to you is, if my head of D&I were here, who's my partner, we don't work in the same department, but we sit at the same table, she would say, we want to track and hold leaders accountable. That's thing number one. Two, we want to make sure that we're educating and engaging people at all levels within the organization about those differences and appreciate those differences. And then I think the third thing she would say is, we have to continually access our leaders to drive cultural change throughout the organization to promote inclusion. It's the last two that I think my department really plays a part into. As I think about the work that we do, I am ultimately committed to trying to create these brave and safe spaces so that people can feel like they belong, right? I don't think it's possible to feel like you belong anywhere if you cannot speak your truth. If you cannot say how you really feel about things, if you can't speak honestly and candidly about what you're experiencing in a safe way, I don't think you belong there. So, and if we can't get the belonging part right, then I really think that while inclusion is an important concept for us, I think we want to take it a step further, right? We want to move from within inclusion to really that sense of belonging, that feeling that you belong there just as much as anybody else, that you're just as much of a fabric of the place as anyone else. And if we can do that for everybody within the organization, we can provide this space where they can speak freely and safely and candidly, then you can belong. So that's how I would answer your questions. And I'd love to continue to keep on the discussion with anybody who's interested. So, thanks.
No, thank you, Wes. I think you touched on some really valuable insights into just people bringing their authentic self to the workplace. I think that's always something that people challenge, especially around imposter syndrome and not feeling like they can actually belong. Which is an area I always stress is it's great to attract talent, but what do you do to retain the talent, make sure that they feel very valued in their opinion, their perspectives are at the table. But you also mentioned something that was very important around young people and youth and mental health and trauma. And that which leads me to my next question for Mimi Haley. Please describe your role as Executive Director of the National Youth Employment Coalition and as the chair of the DEI Youth Committee. And then the second part to that question is what strategies can be used to support youth in achieving their career goals? You're muted.
Sorry about that. I was kind of mesmerized by Wes. I got to meet with him earlier this morning too. And I'm just really was struck by the messaging. And I was just a thought occurred to me that this is really what it's about for young people, is that sense of belonging, and that we're asking that of, you're asking that within your corporation. But I think that if we're all asking that about, the young people in our community, do they feel like they belong? Do they feel like they have a brave and safe space to be? That, and then we all are working towards that goal, that it will be a lot easier to break down the silos and to think about creating those systems that are really going to work for youth and not just work for our programs within our lanes, because I think that the young people really need us working together. So I'll just kind of get off my soapbox for that, but really hope that we can continue to set that tone, and just really appreciate so much all the work that everybody has shared that they're doing. So I'm Mimi Haley. I'm the Executive Director for National Youth Employment Coalition. We are an organization that's been around for about 43 years. We are based in Washington, D.C. I know we have some members and folks that are part of our family with NYEC on this call. So nice to see you all. What our goal is really to focus on and be able to really shine the light on best practices and ways to improve the lives of our disconnected or opportunity youth. And those are depending on who you ask, but 14 to 26-year-olds that are out of work, out of school, or on the pathway to being out of work and out of school. Disproportionately Black and Brown young people. So we have a very strong equity focus. And a lot of what we do is we're a member organization, so we support the youth employment field out there in all kinds of ways, workshops, helping really raise the voice of practitioners in the field, to share best practices. We do a lot of place-based work. We work with lots of cities across the country and rural areas across the country and tribal regions across the country to, really focus on that population and find better ways to connect them. We have, different projects in justice impacted youth, youth experiencing homelessness. We're just launching a national project on that. Community of practice, which not that I can play favorites, but I'm really hoping that Connecticut's going to participate. We also have an employer engagement project that's going on that's really diving into, how can we have, a better template, a better way to establish sustainable employer relationships with these community-based organizations serving young people, and have those pathways and advancement hiring practices also informed by our young people, and really hoping to maybe work a little bit more with Wes on some of his work and bring that on the national level to some of our community-based programs, because it's really what it's all about. And I think we're more and more in the field, we're talking about that belonging. I think, Anthony, you probably said something about mental health, because we recently had done a survey, a national survey on the preparedness of our youth employment programs. We worked with the Department of Labor in DC to roll out a survey to see, how well equipped folks were to really grapple with the mental health crisis that is happening with young people. And I just heard again today of a young person that took their life, and I am betting that the vast majority of you have experienced somebody in your family, or somebody that you're close with, or somebody that you have been working with that has taken their own life in the last 5 years. That was a young person. It is a tragedy. And so we are trying to kind of raise that with the Department of Labor, get more resources, working with SAMHSA. And I know that there's been some really good work in Connecticut. Kathy Awad will be having a fair coming up. I hope it's okay if I'm saying that, Kathy, on April 12th. And, folks like OPP are doing some innovative things to try to bring, in-house clinicians into the work that they do. So that's some of the work of NYC, but probably what we're also very well known for is our policy and advocacy work on the federal level. We're launching a policy hub in the next couple of weeks with the Center for Law and Social Policy, the American Youth Policy Forum, the CORE Network, Aspen, and as our core group, we're going to be expanding that a lot. And really the goal of that policy hub is to, really help us align with, our I think a lot of us, have a very good idea of what needs to get done and what are some of the best practices, but we need the investments to make that happen. And we also need some policy changes to support that, and working with the other agencies that are in this field to align our work so that we're going to have a stronger and louder voice is the primary goal for that. So that's really exciting. We're working closely with the Department of Labor, who's going to be rolling out a youth employment initiative on March 9th. I think I can share with you, I don't know if you already know about this, or maybe I shouldn't have said anything, but a call to action should be coming up pretty soon. So we've been very involved with that. So stay tuned. And then we also work to empower young people in all kinds of ways by supporting community projects, by having a thought leader series, and working with Annie Casey Foundation with the LEAP Fellowship. So lots of things there. And that's a lot. I know I don't have that much time. So, just the role is chairing the DEIA committee, the subcommittee on youth. Really grateful for all of the committee members. A lot of you all are on here. I saw Jackie and Keith and other folks. One thing, we are looking at Connecticut and trying to think of ways to really break down silos, address barriers for those disconnected youth, like housing, transportation, childcare, and mental health, which you hear over and over again, but also, specific things to justice impacted youth as well, and other populations. We, have come to some consensus and have, put out our immediate recommendations. But I think, a lot more to come. We believe that, the state could really benefit with more navigators and like coaches for young people. Also, certainly right-sizing the system, and not just the summer employment system, but year-round employment for young people. And better data. Do we know who our disconnected youth are? I'm going to keep saying it. And how are we knowing, who they are and following them, and, having that data to know if we're making a difference. So I'm going to stop there. I do want to just say one last thing, that we are in the process of doing an asset mapping of youth employment programs and have sent out surveys to all of the WIBs. And we thank you for those that have filled it out and gotten us back to us. As the committee realized that we really don't have a full understanding of all the youth employment programs that are out there and the eligibility criteria, and that this would be a really useful thing for young people that are out there, but also, for those organizations that are working with young people to know, where the resources are. So hopefully we'll get those all in soon. My WIB leader friends there. Please feel free to reach out. I'd love to talk to anyone on this call.
All right, thank you. No, thank you, Mimi, for your continued work and support of the work of young people in our state. Next, I'd like to transition to a phenomenal business leader and pioneer in the venture capital industry, and someone who's very committed to supporting young people in the greater Hartford region. So my question for Ms. Joanne Price is, what challenges have you faced in building a venture capital firm that is unique to your identity and experience? And then the second part to that question is, what advice do you have for employers looking to create a more diverse, equitable, and accessible and inclusive workplace that promotes a sense of belonging? And I mention that because as I look on your website, you have a very diverse team from various backgrounds and intellectual and capabilities. So I'd love for you to speak to how you built that team. Okay.
Thank you, Anthony. It's I decided to tune in for the entire session so I could hear everybody's voice, and it's been fascinating. I must admit, I'll have to reach out to some of your organizations in terms of some of the other things that we are doing at Fairview with respect to the community. So thank you, Anthony, for inviting me. So Fairview Capital was started approximately, I hate to say it, almost 30 years ago. It was designed to build a venture capital fund of funds, which would then invest in a variety of funds all across the country, buyout funds, venture capital funds, mezzanine funds that would invest in companies of all ethnic groups. And the thesis to building this company was that if you're looking at investing, the United States is certainly a very wonderful pool of all ethnic groups, and we have quite a history in this country of doing that. Then if we're able to invest in Latino, Black, females, other smaller ethnic groups around the country, the bottom line is that we should be able to produce even better returns because we're totally inclusive. And so when we went to the marketplace to raise capital for this fund all over the country, which was the first of its type, that was the thesis, that was the discussion, that was what we put in front of pension funds of all types as to what we were proposing to do. We decided to locate in Connecticut. My partner, Larry Morse, was in New York and I was in Washington, D.C., because there was a firm in Connecticut in our business that was interested in partnering with us. And they were one of the few in the country. And we thought headquartering in Connecticut would be able to make sure we understood and adapted best practices that would ensure that we could build a successful company over time. And that's what we did. And that is exactly what happened. That company sold back their interest to us that they had in our company, and we continued on. So Fairview, in order to be able to invest in diverse firms all over the country, we had to have a diverse firm. And that's what we set out to do. And to Anthony's point, when you look at the Fairview website, that was intentional. We don't feel we would not have been able to do what we've done if that was not the case. And in addition to that, and what was critical is the appreciation that talent is a commodity that we all have. Talent, intellect, we all have it. And it's just a matter of building it and really showing and demonstrating to all people that not only can it be done, it is being done and it's being done successfully. And that's what Fairview has been able to do over the course of 30 years. So we started with $100 million was our first fund. It took 2.5 years to raise that first fund with unbelievable questions about our ability to be able to do so. 30 years later, we have about $10.5 billion under management since inception. We invest all over the country. The state of Connecticut pension fund is a Fairview limited partner, as well as the pension fund in the city of Hartford. So we have and have enjoyed doing business in Connecticut and then, of course, across the country. I would say two things. It is very important to develop a belief system. And that belief system has to be that you believe in diversity and that diversity can produce great returns. And that's what we've done. That's what we say. And we are relatively aggressive about it. So when you look around the country, there's numbers of fund-to-funds businesses that we're in now. But when we started, there was only one private equity fund of color in the country, private company. You had small business investment companies, and we took that group and built it from there. And today we have numbers of funds across the country doing significant types of deals and building significant companies. And that is what is needed. And it has to happen with people who believe in success. And so with Fairview, that's what we've done. And then the second thing, which is in my mind just as important, is to take our success and be able to be active participants in the community in which we are located. Now, we're active across the country because we're a national firm, but we're very active in the Hartford area and in the state of Connecticut. And we think that is vital. We give our time and our resources, and we work directly with young people all across this, especially the city, but this state. We started the Brother Carl Institute. When I first came to Connecticut, I saw this man, Brother Carl. I said, who is he? And realized that he was a hero in the community. And so we're building a fund around him with dealing with gun violence, family safety, and building it with private donations. But now that I hear all of your presentations, I'll have to make sure I follow up with some of you as well. And Leonard Epps is the new president and CEO of the Brother Carl Institute. But when I was chair of the Hartford Foundation, one of the things I said to the foundation, it's hard to be able to do this work that you're trying to do if you are not connected to the communities, if you're not connected to the organizations, if you don't hear their issues, their concerns, and their needs. I do not know how you serve if you don't know and you're not close enough to do that. And so the Hartford Foundation leaned in under the president of the Hartford Foundation. And as Anthony knows, because he was at the YMCA, I was just as aggressive with that YMCA and was comfortable in helping to be one of the contributors to building that YMCA. Because I feel very strongly that people of color, especially, must be willing to lean in and provide not only their time, but also their resources. And that is critical. Even with Fairview, every partner at Fairview is expected to be community focused, community minded, and to be able to give and to serve. And I think that is critical. And I think the other piece of it is, and I think this is so important to all of us, is that we must be able to join hands with all groups. The Brother Carl Institute, I went to the Jewish Federation. They were excited to participate. So that has been a team effort to really do that work. And many of the people at the Federation had not known of Brother Carl, had heard of him, but had not known him. And so now we have really tied all of those things together. They've been an extraordinary partner. So I'm very pleased to be here, and I'm very happy, Anthony, that you invited me. And I want to say that, Anthony, you're a great person to be a part of the state program because of your background, your knowledge, and your heart. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Price. Next, I'd like to invite up Commissioner Beth Bai, who's going to do a presentation on the Blue Ribbon kickoff. Thank you. Thank you for all the panelists as well.
Thanks. I want to be sure everybody can hear me okay. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, super. Hi, everybody. Happy to be with you today. What a great panel. I learned a lot and really appreciate it. I'm here briefly, and I know you're getting near the end of the meeting, to talk about the governor's priorities on childcare and give a few comments about his Blue Ribbon panel. First of all, the governor's budget included some increases for childcare to try to keep the childcare subsidy available for more families and to pay at a rate that can help us maintain the early childhood workforce. The early childhood workforce is experiencing everything I'm sure you're talking about in terms of worker shortage on this meeting so far, only exacerbated as it is the lowest paid profession in the state. So we have implemented some 8 workforce pipeline projects across the state. We've invested about $4 million, and we've recently had a meeting with Kelly and her team to talk about how to connect it all with Career Connects to help the early childhood workforce. So the governor's made some investments. The sort of relief dollars are still being used to create workforce pipelines in 8 communities across Connecticut. And then the governor really recognizes that the state needs a plan for childcare and to look at the federal, state, local funds currently going into childcare, parent fees, talk about really 4 main areas. This panel will research and come up with recommendations before the next session for the governor. And the Blue Ribbon panel will be about 20 folks. There'll be 4 legislators from the Education Committee, the chairs and ranking members, but then it's really going to be HR professionals, workforce professionals, early childhood professionals, researchers, higher ed, really to bring a new look at the challenges that childcare faces and come up with some innovative approaches. Because of the crisis, you may find this in workforce development too. You know, the legislature and the federal government and our agency have started a lot of new programs to deal with the crisis, but that doesn't necessarily help us with a long-term systemic plan. So the governor's going to ask the panel to come up with a 10-year plan with actionable steps, both statutorily using federal funds and using the current state funds. The areas the panel will be looking at is equity and access to childcare, be looking at the early childhood workforce, looking at the system effectiveness and efficiency and quality, and also the estimating the costs of the system and different funding alternatives, public-private options, innovative approaches to funding childcare. But first you have to understand what the full cost is for high-quality early childhood education. We know that it's critical for the workforce today to get to work, but we also know that those first 5 years are really building those executive function skills and the skills of the workforce for tomorrow. So we're excited about this panel, and I know there are a number of folks on the Governor's Workforce Council who will either be supporting or be part of the panel. Small employers, large employers, CBIA, really trying to bring some of the best minds in Connecticut to bring the governor a plan that's innovative and that helps both children's brains, families get to work, and Connecticut's economy. So just wanted to give that brief overview. Happy to answer questions, or Kelly, if there are other items you'd like me to cover. Wanted to be quick for y'all.
Thank you, Commissioner. Really very, very excited about the Blue Ribbon Commission. Very excited to work with you and very excited for the Governor's Workforce Council to partner with the Blue Ribbon Commission, because as we all know, high quality childcare and early childhood education is absolutely critical. Is a critical workforce issue, both for the child care and early education workforce and for the whole workforce.
Yeah,
So-
and Mark, I think it's important to note that the Workforce Council's really been a model of what can happen when you bring stakeholders to the table and people with working knowledge to the table, as well as bring in national experts and look to other states and countries. And really, you all have provided a wonderful roadmap for us as we go into this work, and we're really grateful for SVP support with it as well. So yeah, great.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. We look forward to this commission. I want to thank everybody so much for attending today's meeting. We look forward to seeing you in person. Very excited about that. In our next meeting on April 21st, we're going to have, as Kelly said, a shortened GWC business meeting, but then a whole day workforce summit, which is going to be really exciting, a lot of discussion. So invite your participation in that. As always, we welcome any feedback that you have about today's meeting. Please in the chat line or by email, share that with us, and we'll continue to try to make these meetings engaging. I hope everybody has a great evening tonight. Thank you.